Welcome to Project Management Training using ServiceNow with the Geneva release. Before we start our first project, let's look at some of the navigation capabilities. The new navigation tool consists of three basic elements: the All Applications tab, the Favorites tab where you can create and edit your favorite views, the History tab which shows me where I've been recently and some of the views that I've been using. Let's start with the All Applications tab. And since we're doing project management training, let's go down to the project management selection. And underneath the projects subheading, let's look at all projects. Two quick things I want to show you with this basic view. One is in this top right area. In our first page, we're looking at items 1 through 100 of 771 items. If we hit the next page, we'll go to 101 to 200. Or if we select the last page icon, we'll jump to where the last of the 771 are. For now, we'll jump back to the first page. And let's start by familiarizing ourselves with how to manipulate the columns of information that we're looking at and that we want to see. I happen to have several columns that I use in my standard view. But if I wanted to add a column, let's say project type, so that I can find out whether it's new, enhanced, or maintenance, all I need to do is select this gear icon or personalized list. The left window shows me the fields that are available. The right window shows me the ones that I've selected. I want to find project type. And move it to the selected window by clicking on this right caret. Notice it puts it at the bottom of the list, which if I were to hit OK right now, would mean the project type column would show up to the far right of my view. But I want it higher than that, or further to the left. So I'm going to bring it up in the list so that it's right after project name. And hit OK. We now have the project type column visible where we wanted it. Now let's go over how to manipulate and edit what we call the breadcrumb trail, or the filter of the view that we're looking at. Notice that our breadcrumb trail is starting with all, meaning all projects, even projects that have been closed a long time ago. So now let's work on narrowing the view of things that we want to look at. Right now we're looking at 771 projects, which include, by very definition over here on our breadcrumb trail, all projects. Now let's say that I only want to see projects that are work in progress. I don't want to see closed, complete, pending, or other items. I only want to see work in progress. So I'm going to go over to the state column. I'm going to right click on work in progress and select show matching. If I wanted to keep all states except closed complete, I could click on closed complete and say filter out. I don't want to see closed complete. In this case, we're going to do work in progress only, so I'm going to show matching on work in progress. Notice that we're now only looking at 524 records that are work in progress. Now let's say that I only want to see work in progress projects that are maintenance type. I don't want to see new or enhanced. I could do as I did before by simply right-clicking over maintenance and selecting show matching. But for instructional purpose, let's go ahead and go in and build a query on the filter by selecting this funnel icon. Notice that we already have the filter indicated by state is work in progress because that was already in our breadcrumb trail. Let's add another one by saying and a project type, and we can type ahead to look for it rather than scrolling down. And the project type is maintenance. I can then run that query, and our view is down to 328 projects, and our breadcrumb trail states that we're looking at all projects that have a state of work in progress and the project type is equal to maintenance. Now let's add one more by going back to the filter icon and saying that I only want to see projects that are work in progress, maintenance, and I only want to see those projects that are with the Department of Technology Services. So I'll select and. Company is Department of Technology Services. Now, if I were to click Run, as before, this filter criteria would disappear and show me the new list. If I wanted to leave the filter visible, I can click this little pin icon. And now when I hit Run, the filter stays visible. But now that I'm done viewing my filter, I'm going to unpin it and hit Run. And I can see the view that I'm looking for. Notice the breadcrumb trail now says we're looking at all projects with a state of work in progress where the project type is equal to maintenance and the company is the Department of Technology Services. If this is a view that I will use frequently, I don't have to keep building it over and over again. I can go up to Projects, left click, and hit Create a Favorite. I can then label this give it an icon and a color, and hit Done. Now if I go over to the Favorites tab, we'll see that it's created it right down here at the bottom. Since I like the new view more than I did on the one before when I was practicing for this video, I'm going to go down here to Edit Favorites. I'm going to highlight this one that I created previous to the last, and I'm going to remove it from Favorites. And confirm and click Done. And now I have a new favorite. And to free up more horizontal space, I can select this little icon on the bottom left to minimize the navigator, and it'll still show me the icons that I'm used to seeing. In this case, I have it selected to my favorites. If I select the trailing dots, it will temporarily show them all to me so that I can select from them if I need to. I can leave the navigation toolbar minimized now. I think that covers the basic navigation. Let's go on to create a real project now by going back into our navigation toolbar, selecting the All Applications tab. Now we can create a new project either by going up to the top left of the view we just created and clicking on New, or we can go into the navigation toolbar and under the Project section and the Project subsection we can create New. They both do the same thing, so I'll go ahead and select it from here. And we'll begin creating a project. We need to give it a project name. Notice that the project number is automatically created. If you want to associate a business case with the project, you can do so. It's not a required field. As with many of the fields in ServiceNow, if it has a looking glass over here to the right, if you click on that, it will bring up a searchable table. Also, when you see the little information icon, you can hover over it. You don't need to click on it, and it'll show you information about the item that's shown in the field. It's best to leave the schedule, the project management schedule, that's a default. The planned start date will always start with tomorrow's date at 8 o'clock in the morning, and the planned end date will be that same day, 5 o'clock in the evening. So let's go ahead and move our planned end date out a little ways to everyone's favorite tax day, April 15th. To select the date, I just double click. And it'll automatically populate it, and it will automatically calculate the planned duration, in this case 43 days. Moving on to the right column, this is a status field that's selectable by the project manager of either green, yellow, or red. This is not automatically calculated by any fields, but if you hover over the word status with your mouse, it'll give you kind of an idea of what we're looking for with the projects. The phase follows the Project Management Institute's standard phases of a project. The state of your project can be any of these. However, if you're not ready for people to start entering time against your project, it might be best to leave it in pending. When you go to work in progress, the tasks that you create, people can begin entering time against those tasks. The company is the same as the state agency. As with most type ahead fields, once you click into it, it will show you any recent selections that you've made. If you want to see other selections, simply start typing ahead. and it'll narrow the selections as you type. Now we'll select the project type, enhanced, new, or maintenance. In this case, we'll select enhanced. It's asking us if we require a project scorecard, so we'll go ahead and do that. Now it wants to know if the project is billable or not. You can leave that blank if you don't want it billable. It's not a required field. But if you are going to bill for this project, you click that box, notice that a default LCID appears. And this is a default LCID because the only way this field is used is to pre-populate the tasks that you create later with a default LCID, so you don't have to keep typing them in each time you create a task. But at the task level, you can override the default LCID. If you don't know what a configuration item is, just leave that blank. Project sponsor is a required field. The project manager requires a project management role, and only the project manager can edit most of the fields of the project. A technical lead can be put into the project, but it's not a mandatory field. Again, another non-mandatory field is purchase order. If you have a purchase order you want to associate with this project, you can go into it and list purchase orders. You can look up purchase orders in the table, select one, or more, then lock that field back up and minimize it. Again, there's no automation from the purchase order or costs from those purchase orders. And the last part of this field is to enter a project description. This should not be terribly long. It's usually just to make sense of the alphabet soup that most of our project titles tend to be. Or we'll scroll down to the next section. Estimated DTS labor hours. Now when you first create your project, you can put a number in here, and we'll just put in 100. But when you go to create your tasks later, the information from those task fields for estimated labor hours will overwrite this field. So this is not a required field. You can even leave it blank if you'd like. Notice the estimated DTS labor cost is grayed out, meaning it's calculated from other fields. You won't be able to edit the information in here directly. Estimated non-labor costs is kind of a fancy way of saying parts, though it can also include things such as consultant labor, things that are non-DTS. Again, the estimated total project cost is automatically calculated. Going over the right column, the actual effort is calculated from time entered against your task through time entry. The actual labor cost is a calculation of the time entered times the rate that's entered on those tasks. The actual non-labor cost is a manual field. It's not automated in any way. So if you're tracking your non-labor costs, you can manually enter your estimated on the left and your actual costs on the right. And of course, the actual total project cost is another calculated field. The project notes field, especially when you first create a project, is usually left blank. The project notes field is visible on the executive reporting tool in Cognos. Usually you'll enter information in the project notes field when there's a reason to note why a project is going to be over in hours or days or cost, but you can also put information here as far as any risks or issues currently going on with the project. Now let's scroll down, look at the three tabs. The PSR, or Project Status Report, has fields that will be used for developing reports in Cognos or reports that you can build right out of ServiceNow if you want to. You can enter last week's accomplishments, this week's plans. Notice there are a lot of ways to edit these fields, including inserting images and things of that nature. And as we scroll down, there's an issues sections. So this is a way of managing risks of a project. You can enter an issue and a mitigation simply by double-clicking where it says Insert a New Row. Click the green check mark. And now I can enter a mitigation for that issue. Hopefully we won't have an issue where we don't also have a mitigation. And you can create as many of these as you need. Normally for reporting purposes, an issue that's been resolved, you might record that information somewhere else for later Cognos reporting. These should be current issues. Okay, going back up to our 3 tabs, we'll click on the IT Plan tab. This first section of the IT Plan is simple high-level estimates. This does not tie in any way to any automation of the project. It's just a high-level estimate of the project reflecting what we know of the costs, often well before the project is even launched. Again, the estimated total cost will be a calculation of the 2 above once we save or refresh the page. Now this next section refers specifically to the questions that we ask through DTS Rules supported by State of Utah code. You may not know all the answers to all of these areas, but answer them as best you can. They can be updated at any time during the duration of the project. I'll just go through very quickly and enter some information. You'll note that some fields will open up other fields depending on how you answer them. So in this question, is this project the result of legislative action? If I select yes, it will then ask me the bill number and fiscal year. Notice we've entered C attached plan here. This is a good time to note that in most views of a project in ServiceNow, you'll usually be able to find a paperclip up here in the top right. You can attach almost anything to your project simply by selecting the paperclip and choosing a file. Let's continue filling out the IT plan information. Okay, let's go back up to look at the 3rd tab in this section. TCO, or total cost of ownership, is a very simple manual entry. Has fields that are manual entry. If for whatever reason an IT director wanted to capture the total costs of a project beyond those of DTS to include the agency's cost, the agency's estimated and actual could be input manually. These fields are rarely used, but they can be used when you need to. Now that we've filled in all of the project information, we need to either save or submit. If we select save, all of the information we just entered will be saved on this new project record, and we'll still be viewing this same project record. If we select submit, it will also save the information, but will take us back to the previous screen, believing that we're done working in this area. But since we haven't entered tasks yet, I'm not going to submit, I'm just going to save. So I can stay on this project and we'll see the new task fields open up. If we had forgotten a required field, we would have seen an error and it would have pointed us to the field that we forgot to fill in. It's also telling us that because we selected that a closeout scorecard is required, it has gone ahead and created the 22 scorecard questions. Let's scroll down to those 22 questions and go over those really quickly. We now have a 4th tab called Closeout Scorecard Information. When the project is done and all the stakeholders are gathered to go over how the project went, you simply enter that date when that happens. Hopefully a little ways away from now. You'll select the range of total project hours. This is for the Governor's Success Framework criteria. Notice the percent score is grayed out, meaning it will be automatically calculated from below. So now let's scroll down here to the Closeout Scorecard tab, and you'll see a number of areas that can be scored. You can enter scores directly by double-clicking in this area. Select from the pull-down list. Click the green check mark. And with scores of 3 or above, notes are optional. But for a score less than 3, if I were to select inadequate or a score of 1 and click the green checkbox, I'll get an error. It says a note must be supplied before selecting 0, 1, or 2. So before I select 0, 1, or 2, I need to put a note in there. Now it will let me select one of those lower scores. I can also double click into the score, and without selecting from the pull down list, I can simply enter a number. I still have to click the green checkbox. If the next several line items happen to have the same score, let's say a score of 4, I don't have to input those individually. I can hold the Shift button down, left click with my mouse holding it down, drag down the column, let go of the Shift key in the mouse, and double click one of these fields that we now have highlighted. Notice it's telling me that 7 rows will be updated. So I'll select the score, select the green checkbox, and I can enter scores more quickly this way. We'll pretend this is a Mark Schultz project and all the rest of the scores will be 5s. Notice that our total score still shows a total of 0, as in many other areas of ServiceNow. What you need to do is go to the top of that section, right click on the gray bar and tell it to refresh the list. And that'll do all of the automatic calculations, and now we see the score is 193.5 out of 210. And if we scroll back up to this upper section where the closeout scorecard information is, we'll see that the percent score still isn't available until we save the project. Let's go ahead and save. And scroll back down to that section, and we do have a 92%. Now let's move on to creating tasks for the project by selecting the Project Tasks tab in this lower section and creating a new project task. We'll give it a name. The project task number is automatically created. If I'm ready to start the task immediately, I can leave it Start ASAP, noting that the planned start date is grayed out. Or if I want to start it on a specific date, I can select that, and now I have the ability to manually select a planned start date. I'm going to start mine ASAP and have a planned end date of March 30th. Notice that it already calculated the planned duration of 31 days. The percent complete is not automatically calculated from any fields. It's a manual entry. The actual start date will occur when someone enters time against their timesheet against this task for the first time. The actual end date is when the final task is closed. Estimated labor hours is where we program the number of hours that we want for this task. You'll recall that I said earlier that the total of all of the project's estimated labor hours will override the estimated labor that we entered at the project level. So if I put in 200 hours on this estimated labor, it'll override what the project estimated hours are, as it should. The rest of these grayed areas are automatically calculated. Here's where we enter the task description. You can also enter comments in the additional comments section or the work notes. Up in the top right, you can select the state, usually work in progress. I can assign this task to a group or to an individual. I'll assign it to myself. Notice the resource rate is a mandatory field, so I need to select that. A project can't be both on call and normal hours, so if it's on call, it's completely on call for anyone putting time against it. Okay, having completed this task, we'll go ahead and save it. Notice in saving it, we stay within the project task. If we want to jump back to the project level, we'll click Update. Notice that our estimated DTS labor hours did in fact jump to the 200-hour task that we just created, and now the field is not editable except through the tasks. Now we'll create 3 more tasks. I'll show you a way to do that a little more quickly than we did with the first task. We'll go back up to the top of the page. Up at the top of the page, if you right-click in the gray area, you have the option to select Project Task Creator. You can enter how many projects you want it to create. We'll select 3. If you want them to be sequential, meaning the second one can't start until the first one is finished, and so on, you can create a relationship between them. But we're not going to do that, so we'll just click OK. So now we'll scroll back down to the task section. And you'll see that we now have 3 new tasks with no information in them yet. You can go into the project task number to input the information like we did with the first task, or you can simply double click in many of the fields out here and enter the information in directly. As we showed earlier, we can enter information in more than one field at the same time by holding the Shift button down, dragging the left-click mouse down the column, letting go, and then double-clicking in one of these fields. Notice it's telling us 3 rows will be updated. And all 3 are updated instantaneously. Same with the resource rate. And you should certainly at least put estimated labor hours in your tasks. And our last step is to save our information. That concludes the project management training for ServiceNow Geneva release. If you have any more questions or like to request more training for your group, please contact the project management office. Thank you.